I give these words everything I have. My craft comes from just the tips of my fingers, and you savor them with only your eyes. And I'm not a performer, for this face has only ever seen the stage and never the audience.
And these spotlights are nothing like the sun, though both burn my eyes. If a tree falls in the forest and there is no one around, did it ever stand in the first place? When darkness sets in and these curtains close, was I ever really here?
When the dark comes on slowly, like an illness, like death, and only the eyes of heaven see you and know your midnight thoughts, do you wrap yourself in the black blanket of night?
I've been sleeping with my guilt this week, swaddled in polyester, and thrilling thing that feel the moon's judgmental gaze walk by my bedroom at night.
My world was of blooms and rising suns, but I watch now the first tree as it's turning red. What's the point of life without new seeds to scatter? Will the new things I plant ever have their time to grow?
What great things make beauty cry? What summer shade seduces flowers into bloom? If God made rivers of wine, would we imbibe the earth dry? Heaven's wake stays my slumber these days.
What more is there to say? To fill in the space between this moment and the next, I've let my youth slip from my hands, chasing after the morning. And only in the night do I wake, remember, I've forgotten something more.
Big, empty kitchen. Echoes. No. Bye-bye. All done. Even the speakers. Bye, Paul. Bye-bye. Bye, Paul. Look at this big room. Look at that baby in that big room. Baby, you stand up. Stand up. Stand up, little girl.
Your hometown was a year and 2 months. If you find it on a map, it's tucked away and filed in place, a straight shot north on the tollway. Its remaining landmarks are the dead crepe myrtle trees and rusting mailbox post. And that's about all you can see nowadays. But if you do a quick search through the archives, you'll find a little diving board as seen pictured that the town's newlyweds took on one November after working for the keys to the city. In the final days of summer, they brought the last resident up the front lawn and settled together on the living room floor, touching ground for the first time. On video, you can preview some of the town's events, not exclusive to attempts at feeding and outtime. Within the first month, they dressed up a slow resident as a pea in a pod, witnessing the first of many protests, thrown by one unfortunate lagoon. And when summer came back around, the pool reopened and new residents could get their first sips of chlorinated water, which more or less remains a local secret to date.
It's a birthday girl. Hi, Laura. It's my birthday.
In the archive's last clips, the town opened its doors on the first anniversary since its ruler arrived. You'll see the makeshift beer cooler in the bathtub, as urinating praised by tourists. Relatives jumping into the pool, who exclusively appear on screen. Anecdotes and banter exchanging between families. and you from your throne on the living room floor, arms spread wide to the ceiling. A picture frame with your crown and blue frosted grin now sits in a box, stacked on the floor. On the town's last day, little white squares the size of your hand remained, scattered in the carpet. Traces of a world you knew in pictures, will only know in leaving. Lifted from the ground, the living room floor wanes, fades from view. At the city limits, a small family gathers in front of a one-story brick house, watching as leaves on one pavement rise, then fall behind a van. They turn to walk in, and one stares after the sun, dark blue sky, spinning, spinning. Your first memory closes with the scene.
Wait, what?
Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up.
Here they go. Here they go.
Later we go.
Bye-bye. Say bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. This is home. Used to be home. I was born in Georgia. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Chapter 2, Birthday Postmortem. The day after my 18th birthday, I wake up in my dorm room at 4 a.m. with a sore throat and a chill. I'm wide awake, the most I've been in a while, and as I shiver in the mild heat of the last days of summer, I almost believe that it's winter just outside my window. I can almost see the frosted arches of roof stretching over the hill, little puffs of smoke rising from the chimneys. The tulip pattern down comforter I'd had for many an ailment pulled up to my chin, the sound of the heat stuttering to life in the pitch black silence, freshly brewed coffee rising faithfully with the sun from downstairs. And just like that, I'm 12 years old again, sick in bed with an unfortunate case of mono from a foul middle school water fountain. There's nothing remarkable about that winter. In middle school, when you weren't cycling from worksheet to worksheet, odds are you're probably just sitting around, waiting. That was still when I'd speed through all the signed reading to get back to my own while waiting between classes, during class. I became so good at tuning out the world that somewhere down the line, I forgot to let it back in. And yet I remember that time in my life most vividly for its mundanities, all the moments that I couldn't escape from. Like the quiet afternoons when the sun was already sitting low in the horizon for my assigned seat on the bus. Or watching the lights that decorated the houses on my piano teacher street get brighter in the twilight, and the children who'd sail paper boats on the pond across the way, even in the bitter cold. I can still remember the winding road home that went through the bare woods and over the bluff where the sun set in the valley below. And I remember doing it all over again the next week, without a second thought. Those were some of the most ordinary days of my life, but I've never known peace quite like I did then. How foolish and fortunate I was to let it go. But even now, I wonder, was any of it true? Do we ever know peace when it's with us, or do we only know it by its absence? I cling to it more now than I ever did then. Are we lucky to only realize it in the end? I wanted so much at so young. There was so much to say, so much to do, and always so little time. I've never had so much doubt before as I do now. I used to be so sure of myself, speaking with hardly a second thought and even less of a conscience. Nothing but pure instinct. I think so much now. I dwell, I flounder, go back and forth, paralyzed by what-ifs. I've never felt like such a child before, and time has never moved so fast. Or maybe I simply can't keep up like I used to. When that hadn't been enough, I ran ahead only to fall behind, missing everything as it happened, realizing it all only once it was over. I've waited my whole life for the rest of it to begin, but now, when I look to the future, I come to a blank. How could I bring myself to care when every moment comes at the cost of the one I still have? And these days I miss things as they're happening, sometimes even before. Like I already missed the way the light looks in the morning, the cold stinging my fingertips. I miss the gray skies that we grumble about stretching on for weeks, and in the spring when we'll sit outside again and realize the air feels a little bit lighter. I miss mundanity. I miss trivial matters that we'll always bicker about, these momentary routines, running around in circles that lead to and from each other for now, tracing and retracing our steps the next day and the next until it's over. Until it's the last time we'll come back from the break and sit on the floor of someone's room all together, until it's the last test we'll have to gripe about, until it's the last day we'll all sit here together and not even realize it, until it's over. I miss waiting most of all. I miss having to find ways to fill the time of not knowing the next moment before it happens. Like how less than 24 hours ago on my birthday, I knew I'd call my parents and open the box I'd received in the mail a week earlier. I knew we'd wave with distant smiles like all the times before and hang up to put gifts away in the silence that followed, like I knew I will one 4 years from then. Like I knew I'd sit quietly in the back seat and search for parking, and I knew we'd greet each other and find a table and think about what to eat and what to order, and I never know what to say. And I knew we'd retrace our steps and go our separate ways, and I knew I'd watch the sunset and say how it doesn't feel the same, and I knew I'd wake up the next morning with a sore throat and a chill. I lie awake in bed, watching as the sun rises through the blinds, and the day's demands roll in with the notifications. I close my eyes, knowing I'll get up right after. I was 12 the last time I was fearless.
My home. I realized today I don't know how to get home. I was in my hometown, the sweet southern accent flowing from tongues like poetry. Heard the drawl and slowness like I had before. The faces of people who no longer recognize me and who I recognize less than I realize. I thought about driving down those crumbling, winding roads to find my old home. The one I said I would always stay in as a kid, even when I was older and wiser. I said I would buy the house from my mom if she ever sold it. I'd live there with its rocky backyard and purple flowers that grew over the road in spring. The dogs barking and following me as I rode my bike. The cool in my hair as my pedals took me past a farm of cows in the sun. I'd buy every mud puddle, feel the earth cave around my skin with its coolness. I'd even buy the weeds that stuck in the pads of my feet like needles. I'd go down to the creek, and instead of being scared of the currents, I'd climb down the rocks, and I'd dip my feet in the waters. But I moved 2 years ago, and I don't know the name of the road that leads to my old home, or if the dogs are still there, or if the flowers ever have or ever will grow over the road again.
Presenting the creative writing class of 2024. McClure. Richardson. Melany. Kalvin Crescenzi. Underberg. And our speaker for today, Kyra Richardson.
To my fellow graduates of 2024. What the hell are we going to do now? When the sunlight in the courtyard does not rest gently upon our shoulders. When the cap goes up into the air, will our childhoods go with it? How heavy will the rope be? How will it absorb both our grief and our excitement before hanging dead among our common garments? See, if I could turn the tassel, taste adulthood and still savor all these flavors of these bricked walls and this stage, I would do it. I could keep all these idiosyncrasies that make me, me, and the roses wouldn't wilt as they waited on me to fill my nose with their yellow pollens. If matriculation didn't mean the end of Crayola staining the pockets of my khakis, or jotting Sharpie notes on the pores of my palms, I would lead gladly into the rest of my life. I will let the corporate consume me. I will forget the sounds of birds and the blues of the morning, day and night. I would do myself up and take myself down. And I am handed the thin paper of cotton meant to compensate. And the distant sound of laughter will only exist in my dreams, the only place my subconscious can sing. How could I go? Leave the beginning, leave my first taste of peace. There is no anticipation. There is no light at the far end of the tunnel. I want to keep my loves with me. I'm young and that is fleeting, and these people are only a fraction of those meant to impact me, but how could I possibly yearn for people I have yet to know? And how could I even stand here and say all of this to you? I have complained painstakingly in all of my years here, but this is a simple and heavy prenatal grief, and there is nothing poetic about it.
Don't feed the neighborhood strays. You buried it. You buried it under the receipt from the grocery store, under the workload, under the hurricane eyes and your reflection. You buried it with your tongue, with your mouth, between your legs. You buried it next to the forget-me-nots in our backyards. brought upon by relentless March showers. When I dance in petrichor, the closest thing I'd ever get to knowing why you never gave it space to breathe. And when it would crawl its way back to you, embarrassed, you hide it in your chest. I asked you once, why won't you just kill the feeling already? And you told me, I don't want to kill it. I don't want to because it comes back to me.
God is a bloodhound, with his nose to the ground, ears dragging in the dirt, clawing at the floorboards and whining, and I am telling him to shut up, go lie down, I already fed you today. God is in the living room, chasing his tail, and I am scoffing at him, rolling my eyes, no wonder I'm at the top of the food chain. God is a pit bull in a fighting ring, and I am sicking him on his opponent, and the crowd is behind him and cheering kill, and he does. God is digging through the trash, tearing open the bag and getting plastic stuck between his teeth. God has something lodged in his throat and I'm clamping his jaws open with my hands and dragging it out. God is tugging at his leash, nose pointed at something in the horizon that only he can see. And I'm pulling him back to my side, scolding him, saying we'll be home soon. God is jumping the fence, clearing the barrier I installed to keep him in and taking off down the street. I am chasing him on foot, knowing I have no hope of catching him and calling, screaming, come back, and he doesn't. God is throwing an imaginary stick and I am the dog, pulling at the chain, barking and lunging at nothing.
Lessons for my daughter. 1. As the weathering of your body quickens, tie your youth to your shoelaces. Dream of Rice Krispie treats and Capri Suns and tell everyone how you've grown. 2. Gather your gold medals in spite. Itching rebellion disguised as a stifling hatred will wrap idly around your fingers when you hug your mom. Jesus Christ himself will cry out your name for redemption. Don't listen. Kindle the fire of growing up and find that you're alone. 3. Love will breathe you in and out and remind you that you are replaceable. 4. Men will grab and touch as if they were never taught no. I'm sorry that I couldn't be the one to do it, but if they ever do, you can always call this body home. 5. Opportunity will drive you, and ambition will be the last stage of rebellion. 6. People will come in and out, but be sure to keep the door unlocked. Dust off the welcome mat, stiffen your handshake, touch the outside of your bedroom door before you leave. 7. When cotton candy starts to taste like remembering, untie those shoelaces and replace them with silver. 8. Vulnerability is not your enemy. Even though it will feel like it never hesitates to throw the first punch, worry your life away. It can't hurt you. And xenophobia is no real thing. You just don't like Swiss cheese.
Let me tell you a secret. I love you. I can't even remember what it's like not to love you. I know it was different before, when my life felt full to bursting and I didn't know how much more I could take on, when I was driven by the promise of everything shutting down. But then, in the spaces between, there was you. Suddenly, I wanted to make room for you, more than just a room. I wanted to build you a house, a place where you could come and rest your feet and take the time to breathe and come back to life the way I did, all thanks to you. I love your laugh. The last note always tilts up at the end, croaks just so, like you've run out of breath from laughing, and that's how I know it's genuine. How when I call your name, you never turn your whole body, just look over your shoulder, and your hair falls, and your lips part, and I always stop to stare. I love your nails, which have 2 white spots I always notice. Left hand, middle finger, thumb. You told me you don't chew them because you hate the germs, but you file them obsessively, so they're always perfectly even, equally round, except for the one that you keep for your guitar. And when we kiss, your hands glance off different parts of my body, like a butterfly moving from flower to flower, knee, waist, arms, shoulders, neck. I love the music you listen to, each an inspiration to you, more than just music, but your teachers, like sacred scripture. You used to never sing in front of me, but when I listened to your playbacks, you would watch me so intently, bounce your leg and clasp your fingers, so focused and so nervous, I'd say I hated it. But really, it was always, it's wonderful, it's perfect, I love it, I love you. When we were lying together in a hammock in a park one night, and I told you I was afraid of how much I tried to do, but even more afraid of letting go, and you asked me what life was worth to me. When your dog died and you were in my bedroom when I got home, and no one else knew you were there, because you didn't share reality with anyone else. No one else listened to your music then, just me. When I failed the bar and I was curled out outside on my porch steps, it was dark out because I thought crying in plain sight was unbearable, and I asked you to come over, and when you arrived, you wiped my cheeks dry with your thumb and told me to make a wish. I asked what you meant, and you said you thought your tears were more reliable to wish on than stars, because stars are infinitely far away, but tears come straight from the soul. I love you for all of that. It's the same essence you put in your art, the pain and the passion and the truth all alike. I want to thank you for these last few years, because love, you saved me. So I pray and toast to many years more. Maybe one day I'll save you too, in this house we built together. Love, her. Pages feel soft in your fingers from years of use and reuse. How many times have you read this letter now? Too many, probably. You have it memorized. You dream the words on it in your sleep, even if they're cheesy, the kind of thing a girl would write, not a woman. But you love them anyway, because these words were the first, and now they're the last. The morning is just settling in. Birds are chirping, and the leafless trees outside are swaying gently in the autumn wind. It's so still. Happy birthday, darling, you whisper, and plant a gentle kiss on the ancient paper. When you drop it, it floats gently back, then forth, and lands on the table, light from the windows, shining on the ink. You'll visit her resting place later today. The little love letter will not move or change in your absence. It never has.
Chapter 3, Split Ends. You know, I've never known someone for my entire life, not by blood, anyway, but by simply wandering into each other's lives and sticking around since then. It's strange that with a single look, you know all of my greatest hopes and failures at 8 and 18, you know me at 7 and my most arrogant, at 13 and my most insecure. That I could stand in my room and still be there when we made a blanket fort in 6th grade that we practically lived in for 48 hours straight. And you were there when we watched the sunset from my window on my 14th birthday. And we were there when we lay on my floor on the morning before I moved away. I only know myself in pieces. That's all anyone has ever known me by, and I've never been good at putting it into words. Sometimes, selfishly, I think if I know you my whole life, maybe you could look at me, point and say, here is the scar from when you tripped and fell chasing after me at recess, and your tooth went through your lip, and you cried and then went around showing it off the very next week. And here is the freckle you got on your nose when you were 13 and still trying to pinch it to make it smaller. And here is where you used to wear one half of a friendship bracelet that you didn't keep because it reminded you of me. But you still think about it, even now. If I'd known you for my entire life, would I still be close to you? In every lifetime, would we always grow apart? I still think about the girl I once called my best friend and lost over the course of 3 years. And I always know these things before they happen, but I never know what to say until it's over, too late. And we leave off like split ends, unannounced and irreversible. Do we ever remember people for the way they were? Did I ever know you? I still know your laugh, your family's birthdays, the way you got quiet when you thought no one was looking, how you put the first gift I made for you where you'd see it every day. You still know my pet peeves, my pride, the time I slid halfway down the stairs in front of the entire class, and you were the only one who laughed and helped me up. When I couldn't even get the words out that night you called me, and how you could still make me laugh for the next couple of hours without fail. We don't talk anymore. Was I really meant to be a passing moment in your life? Without you, half of my life is missing. I can't explain why I link the R and E together in my name, why I'll always hear the wrong words to the song on the radio 6 years later. Without you, every joke and anecdote falls flat whenever someone asks. I've never been good with words. I've never been good at telling the truth, not like you anyway, raising things from the ground, making them seem beautiful always for what they were, not what they could have been. You put names to so many parts of myself that I always knew but could never explain if I tried. I'd always fumble, dance around, trying to catch it all in time and hold it together to keep it from falling apart, to hide behind. Did you see through me before I ever got through to you? And did you knowingly choose to walk beside me for a while, until one of us lost sight of the path we shared, none the wiser? And every time we pick up from where we left off, how long will it take for one of us to let go? Until how was your day turns to how have you been, before it fades to weeks and then months apart, to only reaching out on birthdays and not expecting a response any other time of year, to was going through some old stuff and found this one day. And each time I lose you a little more all over again. If we ever meet again, can you tell me that we'll speak in honesty? Or will I look at you, see how we don't really meet each other's eyes, time the only thing left between us, and we won't say anything about it, only smile, wave for a little too long. You know I've never been good with goodbyes. Maybe it was foolish, selfish to think I'd always have you by my side. No matter how it ends, should our paths never intertwine once more, if you let go one day without realizing, and it happens slowly, I'll always think of you when the days get longer and the cicadas return, in crowds and the silence between songs, on leap years and the flight home. And when there's another empty square on my calendar, a missing frame on my wall, a faint scar on my chin, I'll still think of you, always.
Driver's seat. I don't ride in the passenger seat anymore. Somewhere between crawling and baby dolls and soccer practices, someone gave me the keys to a car. I don't ride in the passenger seat anymore, and I wonder what it feels like to have the time to run your fingers over the seats in a car, leather, polyester, or velvet. I miss feeling the grooves, the way the seat cradles my body. I don't ride in the passenger seat anymore, and the road I'm going down just keeps going. The trees and bushes sway with my car, and I hum like an engine, always looking, always watching for a new turn or stop sign. When I see children playing on the side of the road, I slow down. let the car ease past. So I know they're safe to play and are free from tires. I don't ride in the passenger seat anymore, and I wonder if I'm too old to learn to drive again. I think about the stops that come too quick, or the red lights I run through, and I miss my teacher. I miss the brake on the other side of the car. I don't ride in the passenger seat anymore, and often my mornings are too quiet. I eat breakfast in my car by myself. I open the door for myself. I wish myself a good day at school. And I realize that soon, even school will be a thing of the past. I don't ride in the passenger seat anymore, and I watch my life in my windows and in my mirrors.
In a daydream, I heard God's laughter. It sounded like blooming pear trees and volcanoes. It sounded like childbirth and ashes thrown in the breeze.
Good children of God, the good Lord has told me to tell you all about him. The first thing God would like you to know is no matter what deplorable, unspeakable, guilt-ridden crimes you've committed against his good kingdom in alignment with his only foe, Satan, God loves you very much.
Did God put us here for fun? What are my crimes? How can I defend myself if I am born with accusations already branded on my skin?
What grievance does Satan have with God? Is it valid? Has anyone ever traveled down deep into the barrels of hell, put his head in their lap, and asked him what it was like to fall once he had tasted the right hand of the Lord?
Can God ever forgive me?
Despite his crimes against our humanity and the earth, he gave us to create as he flooded all of his holy children. God is an optimist. See, he only did that because he hoped we could be better, and Noah was the only one worth saving.
Do I walk with Noah's spirit? When the next flood comes, will I be worth saving? If the answer is no, then why didn't God make me good enough?
Will God punish us all for making peace with the earth? Why am I unholy then, for falling in love with the place I can dig my fingernails into, where I can breathe in the air and continue this life another day, where my loved ones can break bread with one another, where God has placed me? How could I not call this place my home?
Well, God is always here to answer your questions. If you do speak to God, he may ask you to do some very uncomfortable things. You may even have the special opportunity to have everything caressed by your fingers, stripped away from you by the faithful hand of God. But you have to remember that it is for the best. See, God knows much more than any of us.
But if God did not want us to care, why would he curse me with this big, beating heart?
Why should I care what God thinks? Why shouldn't I care what I think? What if I leave this earth and I have hurt people in the name of God?
You are created in his image. God modeled you after himself so that you might carry on his plans and spread his word on earth.
Is that why I am cruel?
Does God feel as pitiful as I do?
Should I even try to be kind? If God doesn't, why should I?
Does he wonder if he's doing the right thing, let the idea savor his flesh at night?
Where does he end and I begin? How much of me is really me? If God's word is engraved on my soul,
Can I ever cut it out of me?
Children, please. God takes no pleasure in causing us pain. If only we could live up to his expectations, we wouldn't have to. If only we were good enough, God would let us know peace.
Has God actually read his own word? Can he hear me now? Can he hear how frightened I am? Is he mad at me? What if God is mad at me? What if he abandons me like he abandoned all of the other sweating sinners at the obsidian gates of hell? Like I didn't ever try, like I wasn't ever his child?
Is my suffering beautiful? Is there dignity in my pain? Will I be rewarded? Will he make everything worth?
Maybe you wouldn't have so many questions if you took God's word to heart. It is your job to act out his will on earth so that he may deem you worthy of salvation.
What if I fail on earth?
What if I make a mistake?
What if, when it's all over and done with, I don't make the cut?
What if all the angels point and laugh
And if you are ever lying awake at night and feel as though you might be succumbing to the pressure of his everlasting watchful eye, that's because you are. God is always watching over you, protecting you from all the harms of the earth.
Is he watching me now? Is he paying attention to me, even with all the noise of heaven behind him? Is he speaking to me? I can't hear his voice over the din of the choir. If he loves me, why won't he show himself?
You must be there for God because God is here for you. God loves you. You must be there for God. You must be there for God. Now please, children, go play.
Under a midnight sky, a small home is lit up by blue and white lights. Its existence as a place of comfort and safety is torn apart by the camera flashes. A woman holds on to her bloody child. He could have been much older than 5, 6, maybe. But there he was, a limp thing, riddled with holes, mouth swole and leaking. She calls for him, as if the sound of her breaking heart is enough for the blue-caped angels to put down the guns, enough for the people to stop recording, enough for her to be a mother before she is black, enough for that to not even matter, enough for her son's soul to still cling to his black prison.
Words cannot describe the anguish in these black lips, the sorrow seeping from black skin, jumping out of black hair.
There are no tears to merit the burden I carry in this black womb. No wounds to pacify this buildup
this plaque
on this black body.
Black gallows drape blackout curtains across God's blue sky. Cries cross the river, scars cross black backs.
My mama laid us lotus in these waters,
Which is to say, every milestone is worthy of ethnic beauty. Gaze in the river at your deep brown eyes and remember her.
Remember the strength of her hands.
The cut of cotton streaking her fingers.
Old wood she treaded.
How can you dislike black women?
There was a black woman who birthed you.
A black woman who raised you.
Boy, don't you know the beauty of divine black feminine?
Boy, wasn't it the mouth of a black woman that taught you to speak?
Black woman that taught you to love.
You curse her through the lips with which she blessed you.
Violate her with those hands.
And yet she shines in the shame. Blessed be the feminine that hugged you, that held you when she knew the world never could.
Blessed be the breast you cried into when it rejected you,
Shot you.
persecuted you.
Blessed be divine black feminine.
What is death to the Black American? There must be a red spot on my head, a spot right between my brows that death is threatened by, and she commands a steady aim from her blue-suited soldiers. They obey, point right at it and freeze me, solidifies me into a mold where I cannot move. There is no out, and as my skin becomes a large beacon of danger, I know that hers, death's, is the last face I will see. What is the vendetta that death has against me? Does the darkness of my skin mimic hers too closely? Can there only be one of us? Only she knows how wide this world is. She travels in it in circles, easy, like a race with laps. Death has seen every crevice of the earth, created all of its secrets, but somehow it is me, my people, now. One of us must go. Death draws her index finger, and I almost mistake it as the weapon, the way she points at me like a hunter's arrow, and I am the mammal, and death yells fire. And these men do not hesitate. What is death to the Black American? Well, to the blue, it is nothing.
If a black boy is shot in the streets, and there is no one to witness his death except the night and its stars, and there is no one to receive his blood but the hard pavement as it pools around his dark skin, and there is no one to chase after his blue killer's conscience, and there is no one to give him a better burial than asphalt and moonlight, was he even alive at all?
Folks, thank you so much. Yes, it was, and you know, Kyra Richardson makes fun of me for choking up when I talk on Honors Day, and I can report that it's only pride, it's not favoritism. She thinks I was favoring last year's class. I wasn't, I was just proud of them, and I am proud of these guys, and I hope you guys are too. I'm choking up back there all the time. This is incredible, and thank you for your attention and your time. I do want to just really briefly do some shout outs. I sent about 10 emails trying to thank everybody and couldn't, but and I'm not going to have time to thank everybody here right now. But I do want to make sure that we thank the folks who are behind the scenes and doing such an incredible job for us today. First of all, that's the DJD's Adam Sturmer. This is the nicest man in show business. I don't know if you know that, but he is, and he is super competent and super confident, and that just rubs off on us. So thank you so much, Adam. And also, I want to thank all of the students who are in other specialties who are involved in this performance today. We are so proud and excited that they've been involved in this program. Give it up for Nicholas on the flute, which we're stoked about. Also Phoenix, and of course David and Lee. They made time for us, and we are so happy and just so thankful for that. And you are about to see some more folks, Rose and Aubrey and Armari and Lauren and Anna and Ruben are going to come out in the second part. So we are just so excited about that, and thank them and thank their specialties for lending them to us. And finally, and probably most importantly, I want to thank all of our crew, which is made up of completely all creative writing students, 10th and 11th grade students. Backstage, we've got Betsy Slocum, Nola Crumpton, and Ezra Klingen. On sound, we've got Avi Goldberg and Ash Pierce. And up in the booth, we've got Violet Marty, Keslin Berry, Ali Callier, and Marielle Vientos. Thank you guys so much. Selfless work, but you guys have been awesome, so thank you. All right, we are going to get started very, very shortly. Thank you so much for your attention, and enjoy part 2 of What Keeps Me Up at Night.
There aren't many people with green eyes. Not anymore. He had green eyes, lush like the grass he sat on, like the northern lights atop a far-off hill. He caught me staring from there below him, so, with the sunset heat in my cheeks, I asked what he was doing alone this time of night. He had a crescent smile, and said to me he wasn't alone or lost, for he always had a map and the stars to guide him. The boy invited me to come sit with him, and without so much else to do in such a star-bitten hour, I ascended through the space between us, pearls of evening dew dancing under my fingers. As soon as I'd sat down, it was as if the moon tilted my chin up to look at her. And what a secret seductress the night sky was. The stars whispered in the language of glitter, the midnight wet paint on glass behind them. The moon laughed at how I gaped, and the boy, without prompting, asked if I'd ever seen Jupiter. I hadn't, and he traced the lights glowing over Jupiter's form. He jested, and at first I didn't see it. And it must be Juno. Venus was far less shy, and she poked out her head to watch over the world's beautiful women. The honey heat of Mercury fluttered on my skin, and Pluto hung low and reserved on the dip in the horizon. The boy lamented how Pluto was always cast below the heavens. And the boy had the warmest gaze, speckled irises in his eyes, freckles spread like ash over his cheeks. And he drew my gaze again and again. As my glances volleyed between him and the sky, I grew to realize that I could find constellations in his face. In this moonlight, it looked so much like a map of the stars. I told him the story of Orion, having discovered the hunter in his cheeks. He didn't care much for the ending. He found it bizarre, he said, that nature could split a bond as divine as theirs. I reasoned it was just the turn of chance. He told me he'd met Chance, and he believed she was a labor of the universe's love. The sun's fingers were curling around the horizon when he finally told me to get some rest. By daylight, I hardly remembered what we'd spoken about. The boy slipped his hands into the pockets of a grass-stained sweater, bid me all the best, and, with no more to impart, he walked away. He had no means of travel, no belongings, and no reason to leave. All the same, at sunrise, he disappeared with the mist. I closed my sleepless eyes, opened them, and could see him no longer. Light spilled like white syrup in the city beyond our hill. Perhaps reality would have gone on as a dream if not for that pocket of night. It felt sometimes as if the sun bore down with greedy eyes, his proverbs of uncertainty into my ears, and burned the energy right out of my bones. But the boy had introduced me to the moon, and she smiled, and the reassuring hand of her evening breeze stretched out from the world that lay beyond her. So I walked the line between dusk and dawn. I learned to drink from the Milky Way. Fake meteors on the asteroid belt blaze through life like a comet of my own. In the dark, upon Orion and all his stars, I wished I may and wished I might have him tell Diana he was all right. And I wished goodwill upon the boy with the constellation map, who held the galaxies in his hands and bound across it in a single leap. Orion did not seem to know who the boy was either. So went on the night speaking to me in the language of glitter, and I learned to speak it back. In time, I too began to shed the gravity chaining me down, and found I could also clear the galaxy in one leap. Perhaps I could, all along. Then, one night came where I thought to hold the stars, as the boy did, like a map in my hands. My fingers glided across the twilight, and the light seemed to grow brighter in ways it never did before. It was only then, at last, that I noticed it, greater than Orion or any constellation like it. There, bright and bold and just barely tinted jade, I saw them. A pair of green eyes in the stars, most certainly watching, even bigger than Jupiter.
I promised I would drive you home from rehab. The only way I could convince you to go was if I swore that I would pick you up. Now you're back in my car and you seem different. Older, but not wiser. You pointed a parking garage. That's where I tried it first. You pointed an empty lot. That's where Mark OD'd. You pointed a nightclub, a Chinese restaurant, a house I thought was abandoned. They sell there, and there. There too. You tell me that stuff is everywhere. You tell me you couldn't get away from it even if you tried. You pointed a gas station. It's there. A mattress store. There too. A used car dealership. And there. We pass a church, and I ask if you believe in God, and you say, of course you do, like it's obvious. I ask you where God is, and you gesture at the air around your head. Everywhere. Around every corner. I'm not sure if you mean that God is wherever you look for him, or that God is needles and powder, or that we will find God, whether we like it or not. I'm about to ask you to clarify, and you point again. And there.
In 7th grade, lightning struck just feet away from me, and it shook the ground. The commute home was always treacherous. One bus took me from my school to another school, where I then waited for another bus. And that bus would take me to an elementary school, where a third bus would be waiting on their last rider, and drive me all the way to my home in the quiet countryside. I was at the second school. Not the one I attended, but the one between it and the elementary school. It's gonna rain, I mumbled to a friend whose shoulder brushed against the fabric of my uniform. When it started to drizzle, kids normally packed under the pavilion, raining over the bus stop, practically on top of one another. Yeah, he said back to me. We're on a weather watch right now. Oh, really? I'd probably missed the alert. My school was one of the few that banned phones from campus. You didn't see? He asked. No, I told him. I haven't had my phone all day. We proceeded to talk about trivial things we thought important at the time, and the sky grew to be more and more of a threat. I asked my friend why they wouldn't let us inside if we were all watching the darkening sky above us. He told me that at this school, students are allowed inside after 3 p.m., not without special permissions or club pre-commitments. So the bus students were stuck in the wilderness, cold and afraid. It began to rain harder, the drops meeting my skin with more malice as the time passed. Thunder soon accompanied us. The thick clouds swirled in the sky and shot out a clear, God-sent bolt miles away. And with the sound the earth made after it, I thought perhaps the heavens were warning us. This one is going to be big, it said. Heed me. My friend probably didn't realize it at the time, but with every beam, he shuffled closer and closer next to me. Every few minutes, the lightning sprinted towards us. Students begged the staff to let us in, and every time the staff refused. Students are not allowed in the building, they said. They didn't care. How could they not care? I tried to count the seconds between the next striking sound of thunder, and I'd barely said anything before the next one interrupted me. Suddenly, I was swept off my feet, my knees shattering on the concrete below me, and before I realized what happened, I realized something else sooner. I couldn't see. My eyes darted around, looking for a puddle in the grass, or the students sounding the screams around me, or even the dangerous sky, anything. It was paralyzing, the view of the abyss, and things were silent just the way I wanted it, but it was fear that went through my veins. When my vision did return, I immediately wished it hadn't. My friend was too close. Why is he so close? And what is this weight on my chest? He was on top of me, also knocked over from the impact. He shook me, scraped the back of my skull against the gravel, and told me, "Get up." But as I moved to run inside with everyone else, my muscles lied dormant and aching. Students in their horror-induced haze had left their muddy shoe prints on our arms, legs, stomachs. I had been trampled over, and there wasn't a pain in the world like it. And finally, when my friend and I were some of the last outside, the security guard told us to get up, called me slow and dumb for lying there on the concrete slab. The boy rolled off of me, brushed himself quickly, and obeyed. I remember lying there for another moment, looking up at the sky, letting the droplets hit my face and body, trying to wash all the terror away. Inside, we were packed into the cafeteria just as tightly as before, watching the sky wreak havoc through the windows. A few students took the opportunity to yell at the staff inside, and I'm sure the office heard from many parents the next morning. I didn't say anything. I didn't sit at one of the tables. My friend's mouth was running miles a minute, and I just couldn't seem to process any of it. I thought of my body and how it ached, how I had homework due tomorrow. And the reason I was even here, a bus to take me home, was late. I was trembling, not from the clashing temperatures of the storm and the cafeteria's heat, but from shock. As the moments passed, it was soon only me and the storm, my enemy, and the thin glass between us. After a half hour, my bus arrived, and shortly after, I got on the third bus. I went home. I did my homework and told my parents my day was good. I showered. I did my chores, normal. I woke up with a limp the next morning.
Rewind. I thought when I was little that heaven would be to live it all again. The soft glow of the boxy cartoons, bellies sliding on floor scooters, pretending to be ponies at the football field, reading hundreds of books about other lives, playing trombone because it's not for girls, shopping on the weekends with my mom, pools lined with sunscreen and the smell of chlorine, changing schools, friends, nervousness, screens and computers, a trip with my church, text messages, playing games with friends, cafes. I can see the stories now, sprawled across my palms, and I can't imagine writing them again. Can't imagine believing the ink was all markers and no blood. Can't imagine writing each plot point, knowing every cliff hanger and cliff fall, and still being able to enjoy the love and joy, while knowing that none of it will last. Which, of course, I do know, but since what I'm living now hasn't ended yet, I can choose not to believe that it ever will. Beginnings. I can refuse to believe what you told me once, that I would have to grow up. You brought me always to water, fire, earth, skin, blood, and told me to pick. I think every time you do, I zone out a little bit because you won't understand what I want to tell the person reading this poem. And I wonder if I will ever know what I want for myself by myself. In that small period of time, as the earth spun and burned and rose from water, and you told me to pick, amongst the confusion and the loud, I realized that none mattered. I didn't make the earth, and I won't change a large portion of the surface. What I can do is turn on a faucet and let the dirty water climb down the drain. Dig a hole and bury rot. I can dream of something better, dream of somewhere where earth is water and air and fire and life. I used to have dreams of being in purgatory because children see the world in glitter. When I was little, I thought that heaven would be to live it all again.
Our Father, who art in heaven, sometimes I get cold and I shiver between my bed sheets. The moon howls and it echoes behind my eyelids, and I'm compelled to pray.
Hallowed be thy name, even when the dirt is sticky with sweat and a heartache is a raindrop in the great hunger of thunder. Night falls, and it's then I light my candle.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I wonder sometimes if you've heard me, or if my whispers in the dark just linger in the air like warm breath. My lungs hollowed and raw at a closed door.
Give us this day our daily bread. In the break of dawn, the unfurling peace of God. Without you, I can't bring myself to face the world's unruliness, the ugliness that stains our post-holy bodies.
And forgive us our trespassers. All lines are crossed in a web of lies, till it catches the dew of morning, when water is clean and clear and rained down anew.
As we forgive those who trespass against us. My words toss stones into the water, and I see my reflection like a woman at a well, thirsting for bricks to build a home and not a house.
Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Take me into your warm arms and wipe my tears away. Hold back the rain and the wind and let me walk across still waters. Lead me down that narrow path, the one that's littered with our laughter.
For thine is the kingdom, this place built out of lightning and breath. Why were you taught to fear the sharpest light? I walk these roads and my step is electric, dancing above the fire.
The power of a voice I can't hear. In my symphonic world, always awake to the conductor that I see best in my rear view mirror.
In the glory forever, as we wait in slumber for the day of days, to see the face of Elohim. Amen.
Amen.
Let me tell you a riddle. The answer is the secret to life, the very bottom of Pandora's box. You can perceive it as both the lie and the truth, the disease and the cure. Ready? Okay. I have 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 faces. I have a tongue that never stops wagging and thoughts that wiggle into the empty spaces, the recesses of your brain. My eyes are in the back of my head and my feet have never touched solid ground. What am I? I'm one day a monarch and the next a peasant, one day lounging on a lush ruby throne and the next on the wet asphalt of an alley. I'm quick to judge and just as quickly judged, just as jutting out of every pointy bone, every tear, every second of gnashing teeth. What am I? Laughter is always bubbling up in my lungs, rushing up as a sing-song serenade to the horizon. What am I? You want me. You need me. Without me, your imagination would shrivel and die and you would dissipate into nothing. You'll crumble without me, wither with each passing day. The agony of death will be slow and maddening. I'm your obsession. I'm your idol. You wake up and you grasp for me. I'm the air in your lungs, words in your dry mouth. You're addicted to me. Tell me what I am. Tell me. I'm your life in your breath, your hope in your despair, the will that gets you out of bed in the morning, the reason that preserves your mind, the very foundation beneath your feet. Have you figured it out yet? Huh? What am I? What am I?
Chapter 4. The only child as a living fossil at the end of the world. It ends as it began. There will be a child who's gotten lost in a grocery store the moment before it all ends, and a well-meaning customer will calmly take them aside and ask, "What do your parents look like?" The child will try to describe them, but their half-formed words will collapse on themselves before they ever get out, held out farther than they can reach. And the customer starts to get confused, so they gently take the child's hand and go search for anyone who looks like them. And they wander down the aisles and through the frozen section and past the cash registers, and the customer will apologize, say that it's getting late, and, well, the world's about to end. They reluctantly leave the child at the doors, hoping they would find their parents as they go on, searching the faces in the crowd for their own, until the end of time. Now picture this. A dim sum table at a wedding reception 24 years ago, in which one half of the table is ink black hair fading into the shadows, the other a crescent of yarmulkes. A skeptical Jew and Chinese Baptist sit together at the center, their smiles washed out in the light. Now you see this picture everywhere, for your entire life. It's on display at every family gathering you get dragged into, handed out in every new neighborhood, every classroom. And some people will take time to examine it, turning it over in their hands, holding it up to your face. It will be her family who called him Guilo and his who didn't think she'd last, all pointing and always saying with such certainty, "See, you have your mother's looks. I can read what you're thinking on your face like hers, the way you step back in trepidation. Why, you're practically a copy." Oh no, don't you see? You look so much like your father, the way he watches the room with silent eyes, calm and collected from years of practiced smiles. You wouldn't know that she's your mother, who burned her hands holding the sun for you. You wouldn't know that he's your father, who spent his days away moving mountains just for you. And you feel stupid because you couldn't even begin to explain why it's all wrong if you tried, why you don't have your mother's courage or your father's poise, how you never had faith in the dawn like her, never been able to speak louder with your silence like him. How your smile will always be at the cost of your mother's, your eyes at the cost of your father's. But who are you to say you know better? Who are you to know anything when in a single blink, in one breath, an entire lifetime of memories dies, washed away to time? I too selfish in the backseat to notice as they name places like old friends in a picture, driving back through the city they can still trace like the lines in their hands? The home she knew better than the homeland she left, the one he was uprooted to at 16. Their first apartments, the road they took every day to work, the last time their families were all together under one roof, my first home. How selfish it is to forget. How selfish I was to cover my ears, cringing at my mother's harsh syllables when she'd speak on the phone in a language I didn't bother to know. How I cowered at the way she'd speak her mind, uninhibited and unashamed, choosing her words as she saw fit. Because my mother's tongue was split in two, cut off at the very beginning and bent to fit a broken language always in the wrong tune, taught to recite that children were never meant to be heard, watching her ba hold his tongue after the customers licked their plates clean and demanded a refund. Because I could always know what she'd say next and how she'd always begin with the end of a story, I learned to trace her words and pretend not to hear, until one night, a relative calls and asks, "Did you remember to tell her about our culture?" And she apologizes to me for being a bad mother, for not being able to remember what her parents could afford to pass on until the only words that could explain aren't there. How many times did the words die on her tongue because I wouldn't meet her eyes? Had I bothered to ask, to listen all that time ago, would I know myself differently? Would I know her? Have I ever known my father's true smile? From crowded rooms I'd leave and come back to find sent into laughter, catching it always at the last moment as it faded. When he wasn't working the ground that'd been left to him in neglect, turning it over for solid ground to take root in, how much life did I dig up and toss aside? Did I ever listen closely enough to his silences and everything he wanted to say in them? And my father always says I'm better with words than him, but I hardly ever say what I mean. I wasn't born with the words. I went searching for them on the longest nights on the bathroom floor, picking up the pieces to fill in the footsteps I treaded over. I've never had that certainty of a line drawn down the middle that I can follow, of putting words to a hollow and the silence to a face fading in a portrait that may have once been a part of mine. I crave that certainty of knowing who you are and where you are from, of putting a finger on the page it all began in a single word, a single name, of one being enough. And again, what will I say? Where do I begin? Without you, I'm at a loss. How do you keep memory alive when there's no one else who will remember? And the moment I see it all so clearly, I always see it, I promise I do. The way your eyes don't need, the distance in your voice, how the thing I said was unfair, not what I meant. And I know I'll never understand, but I do understand that I'll never be enough. It's too much. It's too much. It began as it ends. Years from now, and you'll get lost in a grocery store trying to remember how to look for plums and which ones were her favorites and which brand did they swear by and what was the word for home? What was that thing he'd say that could make you smile even at goodbye? And in the moments that pass, all the colors and songs of a lifetime, the hope and violence of a bloodline, the last of your kind, the end of a line, and the world as you never knew it, dies with me.
A child of rhythm and the moon. Spirituals are housed under moonlight behind your ribcage. Morning has always come up easy for you. Do you remember the first time you heard a woman singing the blues? You're 15. A mocktail of grapefruit and club soda hugged your tongue in a jazz bar. Do you remember how her music took a hold of her whole body, how it limped as she clung to the bar top almost like raindrops do from tree leaves. How her voice boomed through the dancing cigar smoke, and how she howled. How she howled as if her heart had got caught in her throat and the sound was so heavy. Your neck could no longer support the weight of your head, and it hung there, swinging, like those old oak trees. You know, the same ones we used to hang from. As a black child, you were raised on these blues. You danced to the fruit of grief and the sound of desperation long before you said your first words. You were born just before the moon's peak, just before the week's peak too. On a Thursday, you came. Nice to see the pale beauty that would hold your most fragile of secrets. Under that silk-wadded sky from the womb of a warrior, you were given the lunar wisdom that first, the moon could only listen. And secondly, if you ever get lost, she knows the way home.
I want a rich white man to give me his money. And that might seem selfish, but you see, opportunities like his don't really exist for me, and my wealth takes a little creativity. Consider it reparations. Marry me and make preparations for our little mixed kids who had to never learn about rations or fractions or any other action that made me approach you. Dear white man, think of me with your checks. Don't worry about what happens next. I'll do everything as long as you're around, and I don't necessarily love you, just that you have zeros and make my life bound for flights around the world. All dignity. I'm not guilty because I have money. And it might not be mine, but the world doesn't really care how you got it, just that your air comes cleaner than those who can't afford anything better, because better is by the measure, and they don't have that kind of treasure. Rich white men are loopholes I won't apologize for taking, because I'm comfortable in my new shoes and the wealth that I'm faking.
Is it impossible to think a building can remember the sins committed underneath its roof? Is it impossible to think that the untimely aging of this location is just the result of the brick recoiling at the memories of mothers, gagging on their own hearts as their babies were stolen? If a building can remember, there's no reason to question why Black folk keep our hearts hidden deep within the walls of our homes, echoing hope, resistance, burning like old pig fat under the stove eye, singing from the eaves. Despite the presence of shivering bones and disembodied whimpers, a Black father will guard his home in an armor made of cotton. And if he listens closely, he can hear the entrenched mentality of a slave knocking at his bedroom door, bearing death slips, replacing abandonment.
There is such beauty that cannot be captured with a camera, he told me. Such as, I asked? Such as me, he said, matter-of-factly. Arrogance in the lips of someone else, but on him, a truth. He was beautiful like that, like a boy made of starlight, or an angel among men. Except, those are unreal things. If he was a boy made of starlight, I wouldn't have been able to touch him. If he was an angel, I'd have been too afraid to. No, I said, I bet you're photogenic. And together we turned toward this reflection in the rippling water, like so many hazy brushstrokes laid by an expert painter. Perhaps, he admitted, and touched his fingers to the water, the drops sliding off like oil, the image shifting at his touch. But you, or I, or anyone, will never be as alive as we are in each other's eyes. An eye is a lens that sees anything in any light, and everything is beautiful to someone. That's what makes it unique. He smiled. A camera can't capture the you I see, either. I considered it in strides as the river ran. You're saying beauty really is in the eye of the beholder? Why, yes, he mused, as if it hadn't occurred to him. That's a wonderful way of putting it.
Chapter 5, Where You Are From. My life is split between the borders of 4 walls. Time and time again, I've watched as it's been put into boxes and driven away, as a house that became a home becomes a house. I've never been good with change. I've only gotten good at pretending. But you get used to turning a blind eye for so long that sometimes the only thing you can remember is what you tried to forget. I'm too old for it now. And yet I knew so much when I was 8. I knew the blue sky like I knew the kids running down the street after calling my mother a name I didn't know, never knew I could put to a face like mine. I knew her loneliness when I was 3, like I knew it wasn't true when she told me the green Georgia hills were a jungle. I knew I'd get the question wrong when I was 11, like I knew I'd known the answer by heart. I knew I could have the world when I was 7, like I knew I would now, if I'd only tried. I knew I couldn't ignore a person's flaws like I knew each of mine. I knew the silence on the drive home like I knew forgiveness. I knew home for where I took my first steps and first learned to run from. I knew it for where the years weren't kind, like I knew I'd miss it all, even now. I knew it for where I heard the birdsong again, before I knew how to explain it. I knew peace like how you never know a place until you leave it, like the hometown I never got to know, the homelands I'll never call my own. Like at 8 years old, running through a door you didn't know you can never walk back through again. But what a rush. I knew it then, as I know it now.
Life of doing. I don't want a life of doing. I want a life of being. I want the horizon to settle into a blend of the same colors. I cannot bear the idea of constant waiting, constant wishing on stars, waiting, always waiting for when. I'm not that patient. I don't want my lips to be constantly hanging on the words when I. But I'm even more scared of what I would miss if I didn't put my feet on the brakes.
Look at you now, how strong you are. It is amazing to think that despite everything you've been through, you are still here. But in some cruel and sad way, your heart still chases poison like some failed addict waning off the taste of desire. You've approached a time when you think self-sacrifice will be the answer to an unfulfilled life. It is not. I urge you to escape the belief of a transactional life. You are kind, but not for the sake of being kind. You are kind because you think people may only like you this way, and kindness is how you pay for admiration. And you love, but you do not love for yourself. Hell, you don't even love yourself. You've created whatever deceptive definition of the word, and you've used it to pay for sleeping pills. Because the very thought of being unlovable keeps you up at night. You no longer know the difference between transaction and sacrifice. And you walk the taut line in your dreams, piercing the arches of your cold feet. I tell you now, fall on either side. Make a decision.
I mistook a street lamp for the moon the other day. How could I not, the way it was so stark against the black sky? How long has the sky been black like this? Spotless. I could have sworn, asked the little girl cowering deep inside me, that the night ran indigo and its face was freckled white. But sometimes, when the buildings are standing firm on the ribs in my chest and they fence themselves around the sky, I imagine the taste of the air when it was young. What would be left inside of me if I knew that I have never properly seen the earth? I've never swam in unpolluted seas, never tasted fruit straight from the trees. I have never seen us wet and naked and primal, free of these four walls. What is the true warmth of mammoth hides? What is the true warmth of the sky?
Lamentations by Isaac on the way down the mountain. Did he cry when his father raised the knife, ready to open the throat of his only baby boy, let his blood flow in rivers, fill buckets in the name of God? Did he shut his eyes tight against the glare of the blade, or did he keep them open, see how hell burned hot behind Abraham's eyes, a father's mercy washed away in the wake of godly command? When the voice of God spoke and Isaac's breath came easy again, when he walked home side by side with the man who raised him, who raised that blade against him, did they talk about it? Did Isaac offer forgiveness as he picked splinters from his shoulder blades, or did he shrivel from then on at the sound of his father's voice? Did Isaac ever pray again, or did kneeling make him remember the way the glint of his father's blade burned his eyes?
Plant thick swatches of mascara moss over these willowing eyes. I prime the fields for beaded seeds of golds and greens, powder red flowers that cower on the crevices of my cheeks, dry rain those poor plains, and let those colors seep. Girls can cry themselves dry because God did not build them into an Eden or cherry those lips with forbidden fruits. But these are planters' hands, and green smeared on my thumbs. Desert fields prize cacti on sharp, fertile tongues, or you can water that ground and grow a garden and astound. Rebound off your pity parade. I say to you, girl, let it rain. Yeah, you praise Eden, but this face raises the stakes. This girl-grown garden is mine, love, and it's alive.
I've been sleeping with my guilt this week, swaddled in polyester. Is it a strange and thrilling thing to feel the judgmental gaze of the moon walk my bedroom at night? A productive day, ripe for the taking, will meet me in the morning, but I cannot will my lead limbs to move. I cannot fight the taste of apathy as I swallow my consciousness whole. Swaddled in cotton, I chased dragons out of foreign lands. I ran miles and miles on just one breath. I even flew, or rather I fell. But for a moment it felt like flying. I have been a woman, a man, a mother, a spy, and a woman again. I was rough rage, relentless to pacify. I was sour melancholy, spoiling like milk on sun-kissed concrete. I was sweet love, dancing through the virtues of young hearts determined to digest infatuation. And my sleep, I am painful healing, blossoming, like the ones you watch in spring when tulips stretch their dormant, aching limbs.
End credits, an interlude. Less than a month after my 18th birthday, I go home for a few days unexpectedly. It's funny how only a year ago, I wouldn't know to say whether I left or returned. The morning before I leave, I sit on the floor, hunched over my computer, waiting with bated breath for the videos from the retired camcorder to convert into MP4 files. And I watch the blue line inching along like a hawk, keeping one eye on the time in my flight that kept getting delayed later and later, hoping and praying that it wouldn't be all for nothing. And for a moment, I think to look up, pausing long enough from watching the time. From above, my parents are gathered around the computer screen, pointing out the wallpaper, the old tube TV, the furniture they sold and should have charged more for, bickering about my mother's shaky footage, my father smiling faintly, getting lost in a chorus of happy birthday. And in those four walls, I wonder foolishly, when did I forget? The way we used to be, younger, softer around the edges. I haven't seen you smile like that since I can't remember, or maybe I've just forgotten. Were we ever that way? After all things said and done, the years worse for wear, can you still see me for the child I used to be? When you held me for the first time, can you still look at me the same now? You ask me how my day was, and I say fine, and just as easily we go years without saying anything to each other. Is home just a place to return to? I don't feel attached to the floors, the walls. Do we only miss places when we're young, and only people now? If this moment is all we have, please don't let the distance take root in the silence again. I'm not so worried about finding the words anymore. I want us to know each other as we are now. I still think about what you said. Only you could remind me of my best and worst. I don't know that I've forgiven it. I know you'll always be there for me. I wouldn't blame you if you haven't forgiven me. I wish I could know you for the rest of my life. In less than a year's time, you'll sort through the things in your room that you never got around to unpacking. They're mostly miscellaneous things. Calendars of counting days past, things you wrote down so you wouldn't forget and no longer remember why. It's what you have to show on paper for the years given over to bitterness of an anger you harbored, thinking it would help you to remember. But you wouldn't know the days for the years had you not let some of it go. And somewhere, slowly, you start to remember what you've forgotten about the person you used to be. You're not the person you thought you'd be by now, but somewhere, you're still the same child you were on the floor all those years ago. You're 12 and 8 and 13 and 18. You know you still kept the other half of a heart from a friendship necklace after all these years. You always have your mother's stories, your father's smile, and sense of humor. It's a line in a journal with the word home crossed out. You can never really be sure if you left or returned. But you still have the keys to your old house, your old home. And in the fall, you'll put your life in the boxes once again, picking up the pieces of things you've lost and found over the years. Until then, take it in, return to the floor. For now. For now.
Touch with fingers the lingering hand of another. Embrace the mind, the memories, the breath and sensations. Look again with the same eye at the horizon and the doom. Look again with the same eye at the beaten soul of our land. And like deer, leap into the new sun. Blinding my bloodshot eyes. The poet never sleeps. She is forced to see the world through a gray lens. She is ever watching, waiting for a brilliant light to shine through, for a blaze that will set her on fire.
My skin tingles in the sun by something like pine needles. My eyes flicker on, electricity inching up my veins. I feel an uneasy buzz, but a comforting newness as the sky reaches towards the heavens.
In the dark, am I still the girl from communion? Beauty ran into the deserted night. The sun drinks her footprints in this living dust, and I dream before I sleep.
The artist does not wish for peace like the trees. How the wind winds through its branches, a trail of fallen leaves rushing to the ground. The artist prefers challenges and instead performs storms on the page.
In the quiet after the longest night, I sit up and watch the dawn rise again. I think how, a moment from now, the light will never look the same. How beautiful it all was, if only I'd seen it then. But how beautiful it was, because it was mine.
All mine. I've been sleeping with my guilt this week, swaddled in polyester. I'm taking shape in the wind, in the clouds, and it's cruel how defiantly she rises. The sun rises, and even if it didn't, I will. Or at least, wouldn't that be pretty to think so?
The tree falls, the sun rises, the curtains open and close and open, the world keeps turning. You will walk in the light again, again you will be kissed by darkness. The day is yours, and yours also is the night.